That is a great question. I started running when I was a kid. And I remember just as a young child in my neighborhood, always trying to be faster than the boys and just racing around our neighborhood streets. And eventually I started running in school. At high school, I ran for our track team, indoor track and outdoor track. But soccer was my first love. So when it came time to go to college, I pursued soccer. It was just a small D3 engineering school in northern New York. But I always loved to run. As when running was a part of practice, um, that was my favorite thing. And so once I graduated from college, I decided to just run for joy. And my knees were kind of creaky, and I had had 4 knee surgeries through college. And, my doctors had said, you really need to stop running. But sometimes you just need to find the right doctor. And so I just carefully built up stamina and endurance and was running 5Ks. And then one of my coworkers was running marathons using Jeff Galloway's method. So this was back in like the early 2000s. And I read the Jeff Galloway book, The Run Walk Method, and thought, I just want to do one marathon. Like, I think I can do this. And then one marathon turned into, I think, maybe 26 marathons. And then, I got older, I got injured. I turned 40, which put me in the master's category. And I got injured one year running the Publix Atlanta Marathon here as a training run for Boston. And I tore my glute medius and glute minimus tendons. And I haven't run a road marathon since.
Hmm.
That took several years to recover from. And I hit 40 and I was like, let me try trail running. And so I started trails. Loved the dirt, loved the woods, the trees, love nature. Um, and then trails turned into, let me try a 50K. And then the 50K turned into like a 50 miler. And then it just kind of ballooned from there. Social media is as tough as it can be sometimes. I was definitely influenced and learned about like 100 milers and then 200 milers. And I just have wanted to just pursue like my own limits. Like, what are my limits? And I'm
Yeah.
exploring those. And this year I hit 50, big milestone. And so I I love Jesse Itzler's
Hmm.
big ass calendar,
Yeah.
where the idea is like you choose a misogi for the year, a big challenge for the year. And so a few years ago, it was my first 100 miler, and then I finished that and thought, what in the world would 200 feel like? Just couldn't even process it, but knew that I had to try it. So that's how I got to I guess where I am where I am today.
It's a slippery slope, right?
It is. It really is. Yeah. And it's definitely not for everyone, but I just have really enjoyed the journey and like testing myself out at new distances.
I
So,
love it.
yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, something's going on. Where did you go to school? I feel like you told me this while we were running, but where did you go to school?
To Clarkson University.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It's an engineering school up in Potsdam, New York, and there's about 2,500, maybe 3,000 students there. A tiny school, but
Hmm.
super snowy, super cold. I played lacrosse up there too. I had no lacrosse experience going in, but as a freshman, you have to run or you have to take a gym class. The gym teacher was a lacrosse coach, and she saw me running all
Mm.
around and was like, you should try out for the lacrosse team. So back in 1994, you could join a collegiate lacrosse team because you
With
might
no
run.
experience.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah. Gone are
yeah,
those days.
gone are those days. Yeah, but it definitely. And then I trained with our ski team too. There was a ski team at Clarkson, and they would run, I think, 2 or 3 days a week. So whenever they did their runs, I would just go and work out with them at our 200-meter indoor track and
Love
do
it.
track workouts for the ski team. So
Love it.
yeah,
Well, it seems like it all sort of like fed you to this point. And I think so many people that I talk to have the same experience. Like they've had little bits and bites of sports in some way, shape, or form, or they just got into running, like quite literally using the Jeff Galloway method, right? And they just loved it and they kept going. So it's not
yeah,
necessarily that I think everybody who gets into long distance running or ultras is built for it straight out of the gate, but we morph into it based on sports. I'm going to use the term sports experience loosely because lots of people don't identify as athletes, like wouldn't self-identify as athletes, wouldn't call, what they do athletic. They just think of it as running. But in,
Right.
like, if you're standing on the outside, for sure, you would call it a sport. You would call these people athletes. So it's interesting.
Yeah, yeah. It is fun. I love I've coached a little bit of cross country and track as well. And my kids used to love the quote, "My sport is your sport's punishment," and
Yeah.
would take great joy in in loving the run. So yeah, for a lot of people it's like a learned love. It doesn't come, it doesn't come joyfully or naturally for some people when they first get started, but I've always loved it. And but I think if I could tell, my 20-year-old self that my 50-year-old self would have completed a 240-mile race. They didn't even exist back then, right? Like it still feels like a new concept, and it's Candace's fault. I was training for my first 100-mile race, and it's a really big deal. Any distance, any ultra is a really big deal. This was a big deal for me, and in the middle of my training I learned about these destination trail races, and Candace's hashtag 200s are the new 100, and I was like, no. I haven't even done a 100 yet, but okay.
The
So
marketing.
that's when the seed was planted. I'm not gonna lie, it was that
Mhm.
hashtag, and I was like, oh gosh.
So then how did you decide on Moab? How did you decide that was going to be your race?
Yeah. So Moab to me has always been like this magical, ethereal place that I love so deeply. I've traveled there for vacations and many, many times. I've brought the kids there. It's just a spiritual experience for me. And so when I decided that I was going to do one 200-mile race, there was no question that it was going to be Moab. Now, my question for you is now I'm like, I thought I was going to be one and done. And I do want to do Moab again. Surprise. But I've said, oh, like I wouldn't do it anywhere else. But I know that there are other really beautiful 200-mile races, and maybe I should take my blinders off and consider some other beautiful places too. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, they're not I'm not aware of that many other 200s outside of the destinations. Within the last couple of years, however, more 200-mile races have been popping up. I mean, you could certainly, if you did something like a timed race, like a 72-hour timed race, and you were fast enough and the conditions were right, you could certainly get yourself to 200 miles. But there's been a breakout of 200-mile races, southern states. Oh shoot, I knew I was going to draw a blank on.
There's
There's a
Mammoth
couple.
200
There's
is a new
Mammoth. Thank
one.
you.
Yeah, but the destination trails just always look so organized, and the people that support the races, the volunteers, like the medical team that take care of our feet, they were just all so incredible. So I'm feeling a lot of love for destination trails.
Yeah,
But
yeah, for
Moab,
sure.
like there was no question for me. Like if I'm gonna go this distance, I want to experience Moab. I've sat on so many overlooks and I've hiked in a lot of the canyons and things too, but I really just wanted to get deep inside the desert um,
hmm
on a 4 to 5 day journey, which ended up being about 112 hours.
Nothing like
Long,
a 112-hour odyssey through the most epic conditions ever.
yeah, it was insane. It was
Well,
insane.
talk to like so in my Moab recap episode, I sort of talked about like my first, the first 24 hours of the race. And you and I spent a decent amount of time together overnight during that time frame. But I mean, people are obviously curious as to other perspectives. So talk us a little bit through like your first 24 hours at Moab.
First 24 hours were brutal, and they it's hard to say that they were almost the hardest, but I think they were the hardest for me. I My plan was to start the race slow and then go slower. So I started out like according to plan, but I also started out sick. My husband and I both got really sick before the race. He was way worse than I was, but we were both under the weather. traveling in on Wednesday on the plane, I just felt terrible. I had headaches, stomach aches, back aches, like everything felt like the wheels were coming off. But by the time I told the line on Friday, I was ready to give this thing a go. And so I started off just walking, and it felt right. I was like, all right, this feels like the right thing to do. This feels, we were walking fast, but it felt conservative and it felt right. And then day turned to night. We went down Jacob's Ladder in the night, which was really cool. I ran with some different people or hiked with some different groups. And then I think your group met your group, was kind of walking and running. And I think we had called you guys the 100-second army because you were running for like 100 seconds and then hiking. And so it was just, the first night was really fun. Before the rain, meeting people and just getting to know some new people. And then we hit base camp, which I honestly, going in, I didn't know what base camp was. I just thought it was a regular aid station. And I thought I was hallucinating when we got there because it's somebody's house. Whoever these people are, open their home up to all 200 and some odd runners and let us come in and use their restrooms and wash our hands with running water. And then they had their like an outbuilding with our aid station food, medical, raccoons under the
I was just going to say, did you see the raccoons? Because those were not a hallucination. Those were real.
I did not see the raccoons, but I knew they were there. And I was like, am I hallucinating already? I don't even know what time it was. It was dark, but I don't think the clock had struck midnight yet. But so that's where things became interesting. And then we hit Jacob's Ladder after that. And then the rain came, and it was just a really tough night. I remember everybody got really quiet and just kind of worked through that night together. So I felt really comforted that we were all together. And I didn't have the energy to bring like conversation. It was really hard to hear because the rain was
Mm.
coming down and hitting my hood, and there was just like a lot of noise. We were working up and down hills with mud. When you did your recap, you had mentioned the rock falls that were happening, and I had totally forgotten about that. But when you said that, I was like, oh my gosh, we did have like rock falls off to our left, these cliffs off to our left that we couldn't see, but we knew that it was there and happening. I didn't really feel endangered by the rock falls at that point, but knowing that crazy stuff was happening in the desert was like, wow, okay, this is going to be a really interesting race. Um, I don't know what happened to me, but my knees just blew up throughout that night. I don't know if it was, I had a really stressful buildup, like coming into the race, just a really stressful few weeks coming in. Then I was sick. So I don't know if my body was tense and I was just really nervous, excited about the race, probably more nervous than anything else. But, and with all the slipping in the mud, both of my knees started to hurt really bad. And I couldn't quite pinpoint what it was. It kind of felt like IT. I would stretch my IT, but it didn't really seem to help at all. And it also didn't seem the source of the pain. So I couldn't really figure that out. But both knees hurt the same and equally. So I was like, well, at least that's good. It's not like I have one side that's, um, and so going through the night, like my knee pain increased from all of that slipping and just trying to stabilize myself. And then all night long, I was thinking, we just need to get to Oasis, thinking that this Oasis aid station is going to save us all. And then the sun starts to come up, a little bit of daylight peeks up, and then we get our first glimpse of the Oasis. And it was just the biggest downer of the race. I think that was definitely one of the toughest moments, was seeing the Oasis in the pouring rain. We're now really, really cold and wet, thinking we're going to get there and then get warmed up, put our dry clothes on. And then we reach the Oasis and it's soaking wet. There's just a few pop-up tents with no walls. I sit in a chair that's got like 3 inches of water in it, and the roof is dripping on me, and I'm like, I wonder if I have any dry clothes. Uh, yeah, so that was tough. The Oasis, getting to the Oasis was tough, realizing what it was and what it
Yeah.
wasn't.
Yeah. I
It wasn't
agree
going to
that
save me.
Yeah, that one was definitely to your point a letdown because I do think we were all really hanging on by a thread thinking we just need to make it to this aid station, and truthfully we did just need to make it to that aid station, and I knew by the time we got there it would be light out, so we would have that working for us. And so when we got there it was almost like wah wah wah. you know
Yeah.
they I don't know what I we you were slightly ahead of I think you were ahead of me at that point, so I think you might have been in and out of there before me. But when I got there they were almost out of everything in terms of food. It was very slim pickings. I had gone through all of my food that I had brought. So I agree that was a really tough moment. You really had to dig deep and just bite the bullet and put on whatever clothes you had, grab whatever food you could get your hands on and get moving again because they were also I don't know if they had a fire when you were there, but they were out of propane, so there was no fire when I was there, so there was no way to get warm. It
Right.
was rough.
Yeah, it was. It was. And it would have been good to know. I don't know what I was thinking was going to be there. Also knowing that it's one of their most remote stations, but it didn't occur to me that it wouldn't be a warm, dry place. So that was probably I left Oasis, and Oasis to Indian Creek, which is about mile 68, was like my toughest stretch. I questioned everything. I I wanted to quit so bad, and I just was, left brain, right brain, negotiating with myself. Like, what have I done? How can I get out of this? I was suffering so badly during that stretch. Leaving Oasis, my lips were blue. I was really cold. Put on all my dry clothes, filled my front flasks, and then left. And then over the course of that day, the sun did come out and then it started to get really warm. And I realized, oh my gosh, I did not fill my reservoir bladder in the back. So I actually ran out of water on my way to Indian Creek. And maybe the last 3 or 4 miles, I didn't have water. So it turned from like freezing blue lips to really, really hot. And now I'm out of water. I felt like, oh my gosh, I shot my eye out. Like I was
Mhm.
supposed to fill my things. It didn't occur to me that like I would go from freezing cold to, heat stroke. So yeah, that was my toughest stretch, just negotiating with myself and fighting that battle of wanting to quit, um, and thinking, I don't know how I can do this for 3 or 4 more days. Like, I can't do this for 3 or 4 more days. And then I would say to myself, girl, like, you didn't sign up for, a 1 day excursion. You signed up for 4 or 5 days. So I just, the words of the medical director from the race meeting the day before were ringing in my ears, which was, don't quit until you've eaten and you've slept. So I was like, all right, I'm going to eat and sleep, and um, and we'll reevaluate. And I also thought, I won't quit unless the negotiating items I have with myself is if I feel like I have an injury that is going to be that's going to take me out for a long time. If I feel like I'm doing permanent damage, I will drop out. Or obviously, if I missed a cutoff and I didn't get out of an aid station on time, I would be done. But neither of those things happened, and so onward. I got to Indian Creek, and there was a gentleman there that greeted me. His name was John, and he was like my angel. He saw me coming in, and he said, "You look really great. How's it going?" And I just kind of burst into tears, and I'm like, "I'm not doing very good." And he was like, "Oh no!" He like took me to a chair, sat me down, got me two ginger ales, brought me food, filled my bottles, helped me, find a cot. And I'm like, "Are you a volunteer?" He's like, "Actually, no. I'm pacing someone who's taking a nap right now." So he was just this trail angel there, helping everyone. It was just what I needed in that moment, and just the kindness that he showed me was so uplifting and motivating that I was like, all right, well, I got to keep going because I can't let John down. Not only John, but myself, and my husband who's there crewing me, and I had two friends coming down from northern Utah to crew me. So there's just all of these things like going through my head. I just have to keep moving and keep going.
Mhm.
So I recovered a little bit at Indian Creek, and moved on to the next aid station. Um, and
Do you remember what time you left Indian Creek? What time of
I
day?
think I think it was around 3:30. Yeah, I had set my alarm. I had 45 whole minutes to nap, and I set my alarm in that tent, and I woke up after about 20 minutes. It was just really warm in there. So I was a little disappointed that I didn't sleep more, but I was in pain. I was uncomfortable. I was hot. So I was like, all right, like let's get up and get dressed and get rolling. And so onward. I left Indian Creek pretty beat up, but ready to get to the next station. And it was on that way to that next station, the island, and then from island to Bridger Jack, where things kind of unlocked for me and the suffering subsided. It didn't go away, but the suffering subsided enough where I was like, all right, I can do this. All I have to do is get from one aid station to the next. Just take it in small bites and small pieces. I would basically roll into every aid station just absolutely spent, but you can rejuvenate yourself a lot just by like sitting down for a little bit, getting some food in you, hydrating, and then up you go for the next section, feeling like, well, not like $1,000,000, but maybe a half a million. And then you roll into the next aid station absolutely spent, and and repeat.
The cycle continues.
The cycle continues. And I thought, all right, if the cycle continues in this way, I think I can do it. But please don't rain every night, because that first night was brutal. It was brutal. Yeah. I will
Did you
never
have any
forget that first night.
pacers coming out of Indian Creek? Did you have any pacers like up to
I
this
had
point?
I had two pacers lined up, and I was going to pick up my first pacer at Shea Mountain. And my friend Beck did the Shea Mountain loop with me. And so I know, going into the race, I had plans, big plans, and then when Indian Creek became no longer crew accessible, that was a huge hit for me mentally. Two weeks 2 weeks before, because during the planning of it and preparing the drop bags, I thought I just need to get to Indian Creek to see my people and get that rejuvenation,
Yes.
and then Indian Creek came off the table, and then there was the Monticello Shea Mountain. You were only going to see your crew at one of those, and luckily, my draw was Shea Mountain, so I was able to see them a little bit sooner. But we had to go almost 100 miles without seeing our people, which was a huge, like me going into that mentally. I'm like, wow, that's, I'm not going to see them for like a day and a half. It was
Yeah.
pretty nuts. But knowing what I know now, and having met this amazing person, John, that helped me at Indian Creek, and then all of the volunteers that are there, and then the runners that you meet along the way, there's a lot of support there. You don't have your crew, but there's a lot of support and structure there.
Yes.
That was really helpful. But just had to get to Shay to pick up Beck. So she was my first pacer, and I think that segment was maybe 14 miles around Shea Mountain. My friend Beck is not an ultra runner, but she's an awesome like outdoors person. She cycles a lot, mountain bikes, lifts weights, so she was absolutely cut out for the job to get my friend Tack and I around that loop. She entertained us with stories and took photos and videos and got some great pictures that night, and took us into I guess our second sunset, and into the darkness of that next night. But yeah, so it was good to see her. And then my friend Ariel picked me up at Monticello, and took us from Monticello to Dry Valley. That was a dry night. That was like the first dry night that we had. So I had a pacer through that evening, which was really nice to have. Um, when the sun goes down, your energy levels just drop, and so it's hard to be like conversive. It's more like a lot of listening and uh, playlists, whatever. Um, After midnight, I would take a 5-hour energy just to get like maybe a 30-minute boost. It
Yep.
would kick in and I would be like, "Bah, bah, 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 bah." I would be so chatty for like 30 minutes and then all of a sudden back to being quiet. But yes, I had a I did have aerial through one night and then and so those were the only sections that I had
Mm.
uh pacers. Yeah. But I always
Those are
had
pretty crucial sections, though, to have a pacer. I mean, those are some tough spots to get up and over and around Shea and to Monticello and all the way back down to Dry Valley. So if you're going to have pacers
yeah.
anywhere, having not completed the race, this is my un, semi uneducated opinion, but I think that would be for me. Those were definitely strategic points for me where I was like, I definitely need a pacer there.
Yeah, that was definitely really nice to have. And one of the things that in your podcast with Jess, what she mentioned was, I think maybe you had asked her, or somebody had asked her, or she was mentioning that when you are out there, are you ever alone? And her response was, "You're only alone if you want to be," which I was like, that is so true. Um, for much of the race, I was with other runners and wanted to be with other runners. And in the beginning, there were some people that we were with that had finished 200s before. And I was like, "You guys are the experts." And they're like, "We're not experts. We've only done this once." And I'm like, "If you've done this once, you're an expert. You learn so much for that first time." So just being with experienced people that have done it before um, was awesome. And then there were a few times where I took on some of those more difficult legs, and I was like, "I think I want to do this by myself." And so I would, I did a couple sections by myself, or got separated from the person that I was um, running with, and just as a challenge. So one of the sections that I chose initially to do by myself was the Geyser Pass,
Mm.
which was unhinged, pretty crazy. Um, yeah, like going into it, one of my unknowns was route finding and how I pictured this 240-mile loop, and the manual talked about all of these different trails that we were going to be on and twists and turns and like turn right after this wash and it's hard, you may miss it. And so I was, a little anxious about the route finding, and I did have it programmed on my watch. Working with people through some of those dark nights, finding the reflectors was, and then you kind of figure out like, hey, I can do this. Like we're doing this, and I can do some of this on my own. So there were a few nights that or I guess it was just the Geyser Pass night that I decided to try that alone and got the confidence to do that myself because I did not want to get lost on that giant 240-mile loop. So
Yeah.
having the GPX file was
Mhm.
really helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you do get
That
used to it after a while, just in terms of, and every race is different in terms of how much or how little the markings are, how far apart they're spaced, where they're placed, on what trees or rocks or whatever. And so you do get used to it after a little bit, and you get to learn where there is most likely going to be a marker, where you shouldn't bother looking for one. I mean, day one, night one, I remember we got, I say we, but I don't necessarily mean me and you. I mean like we, the big group that we were all kind of part of. We got lost a couple times just because we were sort of in this sandy desert part where there, you could only stick a stake in the ground or tie it to a tree or whatever. So the
I
markers were a
remember
little,
that.
yeah,
Yeah,
they were
that
hard
was
to find. We
weird.
ended up, yeah, in a couple slot canyons, like at the back of the slot canyon, and had to work our way back out because we were supposed to be up, but the way it was marked, we just didn't see it. And so
Right. Yeah.
I think if I had gone longer than 24 hours, I would also have gotten a little bit more in tune with how they were marking these things and been on the lookout for that. So you probably had, you had 3 days worth of practice up to that point. So you were
Right.
ready to
Yeah.
take that on.
Yeah, it exactly. And you get to know like how the race marks things, and like and going into this race, the whole concept felt like overwhelming to me, like all of these unknowns that I was about to experience. Like, how am I going to route find? Is my training enough? Because I'd never done this before. Is like what about my eating? Like I know how to eat for 100, but that's just like, carbs, gels. For 240 or 200 plus, you got to eat protein and take in lots of different things. I didn't know how that was going to feel. And sleep. I love sleep. I mean, if I can be in bed for 8.5 hours or more a night, that's great for me. And when I would listen to podcasts and research, and people would say, "Oh yeah, just a little 10-minute dirt nap on the side of the trail," and I woke up feeling amazing, and I'm thinking, I need 8 hours of sleep. How am I going to feel? How is this all going to come together? So, like, all of those unknowns were overwhelming to me, and I thought I just need to get through this first one and experience it. And that's just the same with like the trail marking. Like you get to know like the race, how things are marked, what it's actually like out there, and then you just kind of settle in, exhale, and move forward.
Mhm.
So
Did you go into it with a sleep strategy?
sort of like I knew that sleep was going to be really important, and that and Moab is a little different because with a noon start, it just felt a little off as to what my body would feel like during a 100-mile race. And so I knew that I wasn't going to sleep for that first night, but wanted to have some sleep segments for the other nights. And I tried to plan it around aid stations where my husband was going to be. We had rented a Sprinter van that had a bed in there, so I wanted to put myself in that bed. And I didn't know what a sleep station looked like, or I didn't know what I was going to experience at a sleep station. I've heard stories about like them just being loud and cold, and so I had eye shades and earplugs planned. But and then when I got there, I realized, wow, like these are popular. I may not be able to get a cot at a sleep station, and there weren't a lot of sleep stations in places like where I actually needed them.
Hmm.
So um, any of those types of plans were out the window. I used an Excel program called Ultra Pacer to plan out what I thought, like how many minutes I thought I was going to be at each aid station, and that plan was out the window from the get go. But it was good to have like some building blocks that and I shared that spreadsheet with my team so that they would have an idea of like how long it was going to take me to complete each segment. But I spent a lot more time at aid stations than I thought I would have.
Hmm.
I needed the foot care, I needed the break, I needed the food and the rest. I couldn't sleep very good. I would say I only slept a few hours, like for that whole time period. But I did have some bigger chunks where I was able to. I think the longest I had was like an hour and 45 minutes to set my alarm. But I was sick, so I couldn't get any air through my nose. So when I would lay down, I would just start coughing, and my legs hurt so bad. Like my feet. I think the worst part of ultras is my feet get these like nerve pains at the end of my
Hmm.
toes. So
Hmm.
when I try to sleep,
Hmm.
it just wakes me up because I'm like, like just
Yep.
getting zapped awake. So it felt like I didn't really sleep at all, but I'm sure I slept a little bit. But it's incredible how much better you do feel after just a short amount of rest. I actually felt like I got stronger as I went. I got stronger and faster as I went. Now that wasn't going to last past 112 hours, but I did feel like I didn't get used to it, but I settled in after that first hard day at Indian Creek. I settled in after that, and moved forward with a little bit more of a plan. Expectations were out the window with the weather that we experienced, which gear was so important, so incredibly important for this one. I had planned gear for, from the moment I got into that lottery. I was like, okay, gear, like, and I just dissected every piece of gear. What pack am I going to use? Which jacket am I going to use? I wasn't thinking rain jacket. I wasn't thinking rain pants. Um, and then those became a thing, and luckily I have a really nice rain jacket that I brought with me, and some pants, and those ended up being probably my two most important pieces of gear, which weren't even really on my list for the months leading up to that. So gear gear can make or break you. But I was
Hmm.
really glad to have some good pieces of gear for when it got really stormy and nasty. Whew.
How long, you mentioned feet. How long were your feet good for? At what point did they start to break down?
Um, I stopped at I stopped at a masa back when I was 16 to have my right pinky toe has always been a problem. And
Mm.
so there was a medical person there, Rachel, who hooked me up with my little pinky toe and and got that toe kind of wrapped up. But then I think my first major foot rehaul was it Indian Creek? It was either Indian Creek or Island. And and then several times after that. I think I had like layers upon layers of blisters later on in the race. Yeah, it was it was pretty it was pretty bad. Thor was awesome. She worked on my feet several times and I'm like, "Well, how's it looking?" And Thor would say, "Well, it's complicated." So I thought, "All right,
That's how
let's just not
she,
ask."
yeah, that's her nice way of saying it's horrible, but I don't want to tell you that because I don't want you to get all up in your head about it. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I had blisters everywhere. And I don't normally get bad blisters. And I don't know. I've got genetically I've got great feet for ultras, but all of that out the window for this one.
for sure. With all that water, I mean, I don't know how anyone couldn't have feet issues. I mean, it was, you know, it was
Yeah.
prime
And that
conditions for your feet to just,
exactly. And then the sun comes out on our way to Indian Creek, and I was like, all right, well, great. At least my feet will dry out. And we're almost to Indian Creek, and then we have to cross this giant muddy, creek that looked like
river.
a river. Yeah, it was definitely looked like a mini little flash flood happening, and I'm thinking we have to walk across that. So goodbye dry shoes
I had
at
the
that point.
exact same thought. My feet had just start to dry out and I was excited. I was like, okay, great. I'm going to get there. I'm going to change socks. I'm going to, be able to my feet deal with my feet and then, you come down that big swoopy thing and you see where you have to go and I just immediately just
Yeah,
so defeated. I was like, well, I can't pole vault over this. Like there's no I'm gonna have to go through it. And it was like
right. Yeah,
through up to my mid thighs. I mean, it was pretty deep.
it was pretty deep. And it was shockingly a little bit dangerous. I mean, everybody that I saw managed it just fine, but just downstream from that, it looked like not a waterfall, but like a short like it was really
Mhm.
rolling right there. That was
Well,
definitely, a
and when
treacherous
you
spot.
yeah, when we're about the same size. And so like when you don't weigh a lot and the water's moving pretty quickly and you don't have anything to hold on to. I was actually walking upstream. Like instead of walking straight across, I was walking upstream knowing that I was going to get pushed back down. And I indeed did get pushed back down. So I was slightly walking at an angle
Yeah.
and I was like, oh my
Ju-
God, this is this is
yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, and my knees were really bad at that point. I didn't feel like I had a lot of great control over my legs. So I'm glad I had my poles and used my poles a lot more than I thought I would. A lot earlier and a lot more than I thought I would. But back to good gear, boy, that really makes a difference.
Hmm. Yeah,
And with those changes that they made with no crew at Indian Creek, it made me rethink my whole pack strategy. But this was less than 2 weeks before the race, and I settled on the Solomon 12-liter pack. I had like scoured pictures of the start line at Moab, trying to figure out like what packs are people using, and then I had seen your social media post about your pack. You had
but
said
yeah.
that you were getting a new pack from Moab. I'm like, I wonder which one it is, and by the time those changes came, it was too late for me to even get any
Mm,
kind of new pack. So I was like,
yeah,
all right, I'm stuck with this 12-liter pack. But that thing was packed to the gills. It was just like exploding with gallon size Ziploc bags of I put everything in a Ziploc bag. And
of course.
but it ended up working out okay. But that first night too, I just remember I felt like kind of a hot mess that first night when we were walking through the rain. My waist light started blinking at me because the battery was dying. My headlamp was blinking. I'm like, oh my gosh. everything's running out of power. Like it was just, you're trying to get used to like, all right, where are my gels again? And I practiced all summer long with my pack, but I still felt like I was just still like getting organized and getting settled.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that first night was quite quite an experience.
And you're
But
in and out of that pack so much in a race like this that if you don't have a set kind of strategy for where things live permanently, and then like where does your trash go and where do you put this and that, that it can turn into a royal clusterfuck pretty quickly, where
yeah,
you're on the side of the trail pulling stuff out of your bag and it looks like,
right, right,
you're going crazy trying to find the one thing, and of course it's like made its way to the bottom of your pack. So it's
right. Yeah, and it was like, we had a pretty big group, and we would stop. I don't know how often, but we would stop every so often to get a snack, and whatever. It's the middle of the night, it's pouring rain, and I'm thinking, I can't hold these people up, but I need to change my batteries. And like those batteries were buried, and it
mm,
was it was so dark. So I just kind of went with I just had to turn my headlamp down to its lowest setting so that it wouldn't be like strobing at us. But I was like, oh my gosh.
well,
Get it together, girl.
that was one of the benefits of having multiple people, is that none of us really needed to run our lights at the highest setting, because the collective group, we had enough, uh, light to be able to really make our way through there. So that was helping you a little bit at the same time.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, it was just, yeah, got in the train, and the train took me there, took me to the
Yeah.
Oasis.
So you get to like the 100-mile mark. You get through like Monticello's what, 114 or 126? I can't remember. 126, I think,
Yeah.
right?
So the
Just
greatest
shy.
piece of gear that I had, I'm showing you, is this laminated aid station
Mm,
chart. Probably my most used piece of gear. So I would take a look at each segment, so I would know, how many miles to the next segment, what is the elevation gain and loss, so I kind of knew what to expect. So we went from, Shea Mountain, Monticello Lake to Dry Valley, and then so Dry Valley was probably the longest little nap that I had, an hour and 45 minutes, which felt
mm.
like 20. But then when you go from Dry Valley to Needles and Needles to Road 46, that is what they call their road marathon. It's, pretty flat. And after, those rainy couple of nights that we had, and like the sleep march to get to Dry Valley, that road marathon was kind of like a nice little break for me. I was looking
Was
forward to
it? Oh,
that
good.
section. And I'm originally a road runner, like, and so in the back of my mind, I'm like, when I hit that road, like, I'm gonna be running. I did not run much. I was just really torn up, but I enjoyed just not having to think, not having to route find. We actually got a little bit of signal that day, and
Mm.
so like my phone beeped, and I had gotten a text from my daughter. She's at college. She's a senior in college, and I replied to her, and then she called me, and I talked to her, and it just, I felt like I was almost cheating. Like it was like
Yeah.
this escape. Like I had been in this the time that I spent with my husband, my friend Ariel, and Beck felt limited. I mean, I did get to do some miles with Beck and Ariel, um, but you're sleepy, you're whatever. I just didn't get to spend enough time with him. So to be awake in the daylight and to be able to have a conversation with my daughter was just like so uplifting.
Yeah.
And just to kind of take me out of that world of struggle for a minute, and like put me in a different place. So it got me in a really good headspace that day. And the Needles aid station was really cool. I think Destination Trails has a few Instagram reels about it, but they had this cute little theme there with little tables and like a cute menu, and the volunteers were really awesome there. So got fueled up and left there on my way. So I basically did that during that stretch during the day,
Mm.
and you could see the LaSalle's in the distance, which was where we were heading, and they looked a little ominous. Parts of them you could see, and parts of them you couldn't because they were in the clouds. And I was like, "Wow, okay, that's where we're going." And so we were kind of heading for the LaSalle's, and then we started to head west. And I'm like, "Wait a minute, we're going the wrong way." But we eventually swung around and got to the LaSalle's. And that's where things got really, really crazy for me. But yeah, it was. I eventually made it to Pole Canyon in the late afternoon and got a little bit of a nap there, maybe 45 minutes or so. Again, I don't think I slept more than what felt like maybe 20 minutes because I was in so much
Hmm.
pain, but got some food, got my layers just right, and then I hit the road to get to that Pole Canyon section. And I had started out there like on my own. So that Pole Canyon section on paper was really scary for me because I think it road 46 to Pole Canyon had maybe 3,400 feet of gain, 14 miles. But I knew we were going to do a lot of climbing, and each of these segments individually, like there was a lot of
Hmm.
climbing. And I live in Atlanta. I can train in the Appalachian Mountains, which are like an hour and a half north of here, but I generally don't get like tons of vert. So one of the unknowns going into this thing is like, is my vert that I get going to be enough? How am I going to feel with 33,000 feet of gain over the course of this race? But
Yeah.
I turned on Taylor Swift's new album and I didn't feel a single foot of vert going from Road 46 uh, up to Pole Canyon. I don't know. Something magic happened um, on that section for me. It's pretty desolate. Like by this point, there's like sometimes you can see people in front of you or behind you, but a lot of times I didn't. And so I didn't have any reservations about like playing my music out loud. I didn't have any headphones with me. So I turned my music on and I just trucked up to Pole Canyon with that new Taylor Swift album. So every time I hear Fate of Ophelia, I'm just like pushing myself right up that hill. Um, and then I got to Pole Canyon aid station in the dark. I don't know what time it was, but it was definitely in the dark, maybe close to midnight, and it started to rain
Hmm.
and rain and rain and rain. And by that time, I can't remember which day it is or which night it is. I guess I'm now on night 4. And so the sleep deprivation is creeping in. My hallucinations weren't bad. They were quite boring, actually. Like I would see a giant boulder, and I was like, "Is that a van or a boulder?" And it was a
Hmm.
boulder. Like nothing super exciting. Like my brain was making things out to be things that they weren't, like rocks into dogs or rocks into vans. But like no trolls, no
No
fairies, like
psychedelic
no,
hallucinations.
no, nothing really fun. And maybe I thought I saw an aid station or something, but like, yeah. So, but the sleep deprivation was starting to get pretty brutal. And I think the section that I was most nervous about was Pole Canyon to Geyser Pass. And so now I'm there in the middle of the night in the pouring rain, and I'm in that Pole Canyon aid station, and I'm thinking, okay, I got to get up and get going. I have some video from that station, um, and it's just pouring rain. Like the mud is just everywhere. Uh, and like some of my most poignant, like visual memories come from this next section. So I just took a deep breath and I was like, I'm going to do this section alone. I can do this.
Hmm.
Like I had learned about the route finding that I can do it. My watch is good. The marks are good. Um, and I actually took screenshots of each page of the manual, the runner's manual, so that um, if I wanted to, if I was relaxed and comfortable, I would just pull up the screenshot and just read what the next section was going to be like. So my plan was like, oh, I'll leave an aid station and I'll see what it says about the next section and the turns that we'll encounter. For this section, the manual said something like, the trails are, a little bit harder to find. Some of these don't even feel like trails. You're wondering if you're even on the trail. Turns out that's pretty true. The route finding was really tricky. And I don't know how many miles past the Pole Canyon aid station. It started to get really stormy. So I stopped and I put my full rain gear on. Um, and then I got to this one part where the clouds and fog were just, everything was like blowing sideways. the rain was coming down, and super foggy, and I could see a reflector in the distance. It was kind of like a clearing,
Hmm.
and I got to that reflector, and then I couldn't see anything else. And I thought, if I leave this spot, I may never make it back here because you couldn't see
Yeah.
anything. And so at that point, I was like, I'm going to stay here until somebody else comes, and I'm going to do this next part with someone. It's just, I needed a team, like we needed to work as a
Yeah.
team to get through there.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad I waited. It didn't take very long.
That was going to be my next question.
Somebody yelled up to me. They're like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm waiting." And they said, "For
Waiting
what?"
for
And I'm like,
you.
"For you." so, so it ended up being this runner. I think his name was Tim, and I think his pacer's name was Ethan. But the three of us like worked through that next section together. Like there was no chit chat. It was just work, like heads down. Again, it was like raining and absolutely miserable, super windy. Um, but the route finding was really difficult for parts of that. And boy, it would be interesting to see what that would look like during the day. But at night, you can't see anything except for like dark, wet ground. And so you're just, and then the route finding on your watch is okay, but it won't tell you that you're off trail until you're pretty far off. So you could go 40, 50 feet off trail, and in the dark when you can't see anything and you're on the side of a 10,000-foot mountain, it's just really, really difficult. So we took some wrong turns. It took us a little while to finagle our way through that one part, that I can visually just, that was like a turning point for me. It was that, like that clearing with the thing where I was like, I can't do this alone. So
Hmm.
we struggled through the night, but we did it, and we went up and down and around, and I don't even know where we went. And I think the manual said it's going to feel like you're, you know, going in
Yeah.
a going nowhere.
Yeah.
um, and
That's
then
hard. I mean, like, I think it's probably really good that you made the smart decision to stop and wait because you certainly could have gone on. But it's funny because we're recording this today, but the episode that I just recorded that came out today was sort of like a little bit of a book review of this book that I just read about a woman who did a winter hike here in New Hampshire. She tried to do a section of the presidential traverse, and spoiler alert, she ended up passing away because she did it in wintertime, and
yeah,
there was just a whole bunch of decisions that she made leading up to that ultimately ended with the fact that she passed away. She got hypothermia. She got, she was hallucinating. I mean, this is
yeah,
for the lack of a better term, it's a post-mortem analysis of like all the decisions that she made and how they either did or didn't work for her. And I think that's a really important part about this whole process. Like we can talk about training, we can talk about fueling, we can talk about sleep strategies, and every single one of those is a micro decision that has, what's the word I want? Has a trickle down effect, right? And so if it's not necessarily the fact that she made a decision about this, that, or the other, it's the series of events, right? The series of small
exactly.
decisions that she made. And the same is true. The reason I did the episode on it was because I think it obviously has a lot of tie-ins and parallels to ultra running. You don't end up DNFing. Like if I take, my DNF at Moab as an example, like I didn't just DNF because I stopped having fun, which definitely was part of it. But like I had my feet were, I had made crappy decisions about feet and clothes and shoe, like all these things. And that's not to say that I couldn't have righted the ship, because clearly there were people like you who were in a very similar situation as me. And it was just all about decisions, right? Like I decided to stop, you decided to go on. And so, not right or wrong, but just a different set
Right.
of circumstances. And so,
Yeah.
hearing you think about standing there and deciding to stay still and just wait and stay put until somebody came, I think is like a super smart decision, especially because of that section too.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I had already had some fears going into it. And when I left Pole Canyon, I love that I felt like I'm going to tackle this by myself. And then I also love that I got to that point and I was like, I don't want to do this alone. I shouldn't do this alone. And I know, the race organizers are awesome. And I've heard stories about how, Candace has gone and rescued people, but I didn't want to be the one that needed to be rescued. And my spidey senses was like, don't leave this spot because you may
Yeah.
never make it back here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And your spidey senses, you need to listen to those, right? We need to listen to those, those sounds when they speak to us, because it can be like a series of like a snowball effect. And I knew in that moment, like it's dangerous. You're up above 10,000 feet. There are storms happening. Apparently there were trees falling. I did not hear them, but it is dangerous up there. It's really rugged. And so I'm glad I had those two gentlemen to work through that night with. I'll never forget that night. It's as difficult as it was, like it's not like, it's just so memorable. I don't really know how to describe it. I don't think of that night in a bad way. It changed me though. I came out of that and during that night, so I think that was my night 4. I Maybe the rain had subsided a little bit, and I wanted to talk to these guys a little bit because we were just kind of like, we were doing nothing but work, and I wanted to find out like where they were from. But I was so sleep deprived that I didn't know what words were going to come out of my mouth. So I would clear my throat just to make a sound, just to see like, I didn't know if I could talk. I was so tired. I didn't know if I could talk and even just say, so where are you from? I mean, that's how tired I was. It was wild. So that part was scary too, knowing that I was really tired and didn't even know if I could like communicate with
Yeah.
words.
Yeah.
But I could. I asked a question, and I can't remember where they are from. But yeah, it was an interesting night. The sun started to come up, and I felt like I was maybe on top of some type of pass, and then I started to down climb. And boy, was the mud that I had to down climb through the slipperiest mud I have
Mm.
ever experienced. I mean, at one point, I just slipped. Both feet came out from under me, and I just flat on my back. Luckily, my Solomon pack was full of gear, and so nice cushioned landing. But I basically had to walk and like bushwhack along that trail to get down. I couldn't even set one foot on it. I would just slip. So that part was really wild. And I'd been on that particular trail before. I did a race out there called the Ute 50 miler. So it looked familiar to me. There was a lot of pretty aspens. They were like all yellow because it was now, mid-October, I guess. It was a pretty section, but it felt very desolate and lonely and wintry, and
Mm.
the vibes were not good for me at that point. I was at this point now by myself. I had left Tim and Ethan because I think the runner needed a nap, and I was ready to keep going. We had gotten through like the most difficult part, and I was like, I'm gonna keep going. The sun came up, and then I felt like I didn't see anyone for hours, and my brain started playing tricks on me. Like, am I really doing this? Like, where where
Yeah.
is everybody? Like, where is everybody? And the first person I saw when the sun came up was the aid station captain, or one of the aid station volunteers from Geyser Pass, was walking backwards looking for runners, knowing that that night was so terrible. Um, and he saw me and he was like, "Are you okay? Like, I'm so sorry that you had to go through that last night. We've heard some terrible stories, and that was so like dehumanizing." And he was just like, he was so kind. Again, just another like just super kind person. I just, started to cry. Like, it just felt like I found a human. Like, and it wasn't like, I don't even know what the tears came from. Just like emotional. Like, wow, I survived that night, and this person is like just being so kind and like understanding about like what we went through. Um, and then I just marched on, and then it just took me forever to get to Geyser Pass. But all along the way, I knew, my husband was going to be there, and I didn't know what to tell him. I didn't want to tell him too much because I was going to hit Geyser Pass at mile 200 and
Hmm.
then have only, 40 miles to go.
Yep.
So I was like, I don't know if I want to tell him like what happened last night, because I don't want to upset him, because I was super upset about it. I don't know. don't really know how to explain those emotions. I never feared for my life, but it was scary. It was
Mhm.
hard. I,
It's unsettling for sure. And it
yeah,
is really because I've had some of those experiences too, not necessarily at Moab, but in other races where it's like it's to your point, it's a little unhinged, right? It's unsettling, but you don't necessarily feel afraid for your life. You're just like, this is not where I want to be, so I need to get myself out of this situation and I'm just gonna, and I do agree with you. You come out the other side of micro experiences like this and maybe the greater experience of having run again could be any distance. It doesn't necessarily have to come from a 200, but you come out the other side a little changed because you are just maybe a little bit in awe of the fact that you just completed that. You go into it, you've mentioned it a couple times, you're unsure, you've not done this before, a little freaked out about this, that, or the other. This section in particular was one that you were most nervous about because of, obviously, it is kind of, it's way up there, it's very remote, it's challenging. And then you come out the other side and you're just like, almost like dumbstruck. You're like, I can't believe I just did that. But then I also agree, like, there are certain parts that I would not want to tell pacers, especially, crew, especially a husband, where, you don't want them to really worry about you, but you want them to do their job and support you and like
yeah,
keep you moving forward versus being like, oh my God, that's crazy, you should just stop. Not that I think that your husband was going to, but I mean,
yeah,
if your
yeah,
husband is anything like mine, his tendency is to, be my husband first and my crew chief later. And I really
right.
always try to remind him, like, your job here is crew chief first.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I know. That's why I was like, I can't really tell him. Like, I'll just tell him about it after. I'll just tell him when I see him, like, I survived. I'm okay. I'll tell you about it later. But yeah, you do come out of those experiences change. And I think like the strength that I've gained from that is like, I don't even care about the weather anymore. Like we can do anything. We survived. Like we can like, I bought these rain pants from REI that I ended up really depending on. I almost took them back before the race. Like before I knew that it was going to rain in Moab. I think I had bought them like in the spring and I thought, and I hadn't used them. I was like, I don't even want to own rain pants because I don't want to do anything that requires rain pants. Like, no thanks, I'll stay inside. I now feel like I can do anything in any weather. Part of that is because of that night in Geyser Pass.
Yeah.
Bring it on. Like I
Yeah.
don't even care anymore. Like I can survive that. So that's a really cool feeling. Of course, right after the race, I didn't want to have any discomforts whatsoever. I wanted to be warm, well
Yes.
fed, hydrated, but I'm a few months out now and I'm like, all right, the weather is not going to stop me. But I did take a video, like a video coming out of Geyser Pass that morning when the sun came up um, and talk just for like a few seconds, like a quick update. So I wanted to try to do that like along the race so I could see kind of like my downfall. But I hardly recognize myself like
Mm.
in this video. And at one point I hold my phone close to myself because I was like, is that mud or is that just like dark circles? And it was just dark circles. And I'm unrecognizable. I showed my mom, like, I didn't show her the video. I didn't play the video for her, but I showed her like a screenshot of my face and she nearly cried. It was pretty bad, but survived that night, got to Geyser Pass. That's when I changed my shoes. My shoes
Wow.
were so muddy. Changed my shoes, got some dry clothes on, took a nice little nap, and then left that aid station with 40 miles to go. And those were those were difficult. Well, you leave Geyser Pass and you just start hiking up this road. It's like I think it was a gravel road, and you just go up, 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 up. I'm like, oh my goodness. Um, but that part was okay, and then it ended up being more of that course that I was familiar with from the Ute 50 miler that I had done like a few summers ago. So I was like, I recognize this. I've been here before. The aspens are beautiful. It just looks different than like the more deserty Red Rock parts that we were in. Um, my goal had been to try to get to see Castle Valley during the daytime. And unfortunately, I didn't make it in time. Day turned to night. By the time I got to Porcupine Rim, the sun had gone down. So one of the one of the runners that I had started the race with um, had DNF'd, and then he was working the aid station there. So he made me a cheeseburger. So I had a nice little cheeseburger, took a little cat nap, maybe like a 20-minute cat nap. And then I was ready to tackle that last section of Porcupine Rim to the finish.
Mm.
And now it's dark. And now in my mind, just like that Geyser Pass section, I had some, some fears. For this section, I knew that there was like a down climb to the river. There were some cliffs, maybe a little bit of exposure. I'm afraid of heights. So I was like, well, great. At least I don't have to see the heights that I'm exposed to. But I had heard that route finding was really difficult at night. And I think I had read somewhere that, or maybe somebody had told me that, oh yeah, it's great to have a pacer because they can look for like pole, like hiking pole tracks, like in the sand. And I'm
Mm.
thinking, it's that hard? Like we have to look for footprints? Like this is going to be difficult. So I was really, apprehensive about taking that section on by myself. Um, but I got started, and then wouldn't you know, there's that angel John again. John, the person that I had met at Indian Creek, was now pacing somebody else from Porcupine Rim. So I started out with John and the athlete that he was pacing, and I had more energy than the person that he was pacing, but I didn't want to. I didn't want to go it alone. I was just nervous that I was going to get lost. It was just different. It was just a different type of trail, and I didn't have the confidence to leave them. And there was nobody in front of me, and so I stayed with them for a while. And John was like encouraging me. He's like, you can, if you go on and you just don't know where that next turn is, just stay there, and I'll find you and I'll help you find the next turn. And he was kind of trying to like, teach me to fish, kind of
Yep.
push me out of the nest. And like, over time, I just kind of built up confidence again, and I was itchy to like move a little bit faster. And John was like, you know what, you can always just stop, and we'll catch up to you and help. And so I finally I texted my husband. By that time I was like I was in a cell signal. So I texted Eric and I said, I'm going to be a little bit slower. Like I don't feel comfortable leaving John and his runner. And then like a minute later, I'm like, I'm out of here. I can do this. And I texted him again. I'm like, scratch that. I'm moving. And so I put that Taylor Swift back on again. And when I say I took off, like, maybe I went from like I don't know, a 25-minute mile to a 20-minute mile or whatever. It's not like but I started moving pretty good again. And I knew I was getting closer. And then my goal was like, let me see if I can move fast enough to like catch someone.
Mm.
But I knew that nobody had left the aid station. Like there was a huge chunk of time where nobody left the aid station like in front of me. So I knew it was like people were pretty far in front of me. But then I started to see headlamps in the desert, and then they would be over there. And then, like they were, it was, so I didn't really know, and it's not a straight shot. So I
Right.
didn't know how many miles or whatever were in between me and this next group, but I was able to catch up to some people. And that is where my mind really started to play tricks on me, because I started to think that I had been on that section before. It started to
Mm.
feel like familiar to me. And then I was like, am I dreaming? Like, did my friend Beck take me on this trail? And I started to have like real visual pictures of like what it looked like. And I had never seen it before. I know now that I've never been there. And then I started to not know whether I was dreaming or not.
Mm.
And which is really hard for my engineering brain. Like it's kind of like, I couldn't, I knew, I don't know. I literally didn't know whether I was dreaming or not for those last few hours. It was so bizarre. But I knew that I didn't know. So I don't really know how to explain it, but I I didn't know if I was actually about to finish the race. And I was like, is this a dream? I knew we flew to Moab. I know we picked up a Sprinter van. I don't think I've been on this section before, but why do I remember it? Like I can see it so clearly in my mind. So it was bizarre. And I almost texted Eric again, like, is this real? But then I was like, no, I can't text him that. He'll be really worried and he won't understand what I mean. But I didn't
Yeah.
really know if it was real. It was so crazy. That part was really strange for me. Because yeah, and so then I decided I finally made it like off the, off the cliffy red rock part, and onto the bike path. Um, and once I got down on the bike path, I was like, all right, like let's again, I'm a road runner at heart. I thought I would hit that bike path and just start jogging or whatever. I was in so much pain.
Yeah.
Um, that was really hard. And I also didn't want to get past on the path. But so, part of my ego was like, like let's just stay where you are, like in the pack. Like let me just maintain my position or whatever, just to have some sort of challenge. And so then I thought I heard and saw people behind me, and then I didn't see headlamps. And so I was like, is my brain playing tricks on me? I couldn't figure out like who was behind me, who was ahead of me. So I would jog a little bit, walk a little bit, and it was just a struggle. I think it was maybe 3 miles on that bike path. It was just such a struggle, um, so uncomfortable. And then when I got to the intersection where I think it's the main road that goes through Moab, I wasn't sure how to get across that road, so I must have missed a marker or something, and so I got off the path to move to that intersection and realized that there wasn't a crosswalk there.
Hmm.
So I was like, oh no, I was probably supposed to go under it
Yes.
and then cross. And so I started to backtrack, and I was like, no way, I'm not going all the way back down there. And it's now the dead of night. It's like 3:50 in the morning or whatever it was. And there were no cars. So I actually just went back to the road, and crossed the road. I would love to see, I should take a look at my GPS file to see like how many circles I did, like trying to figure out how to get across the road. Cause I wanted to do the right thing and like follow the course, but I didn't really know where it was. And so I crossed the road and I'm heading towards the campground, which we were also camped at. And I heard nothing. I was like,
Mm.
where is everyone? Like, is this, am I dreaming still? Like, is this real? And I was like, well, if it is real, then I should at least like act happy, be happy, so like I'm smiling in my finish line picture or whatever, like just in case it's real. And so I finally, like, I'm going down the hill into the campground, and then I can start to hear bells and see lights, and I'm like, okay, I'm in the right place. And um rounded that corner, and saw my husband and my friend back. And yeah, and there was the finish line. And um and it it uh I crossed the line and fell into my husband's arms, and the first thing I said, there's, it's on video, I'm like, is this real, is this real? um and it was very real. It was very real. It was an unreal feeling, but it was not a dream. Still feels like one. The whole thing, I think, kind of feels like an out of body experience, is the only way I can describe it. I don't know how your experiences have been, but it's almost like it wasn't me that experienced it. It's like me from above, just watching this thing happen. And yeah, it's so wild to even just talk about it. Like I can't believe that it happened, that I did it, that was actually me that was down there doing that.
Yeah.
It's
It's so much to process
bizarre.
too. It's so much happens in a condensed period of time, right? It's not just a 50K, it's not just 50 miles or 100 or whatever. And you have so many experiences within the confines of those races, and now stretch it out to be 240 miles, stretch it over a couple of days, add in the weather, and you've just got, I mean, a lifetime's worth of crazy experiences packed into four days, 5 nights, or whatever it ends up being. And there's so much that you just have to your point, work through, that you don't have time to process it. You don't have time to really think about it. Sometimes you just have to do it, make
Hmm.
the best decisions that you can in the moment based on whatever information you have, where you're trying to go, what you're trying to accomplish. And then because you have to work through it so quickly, this is my opinion. I don't think you have time to really embody it or understand it. You just have to do it. And then afterwards, it's like conversations like this, or laying in bed after the race, or talking to your crew in between when you see them and when you don't see them, and relaying stories. And it's so funny because you've had the whole experience, but what you're dishing out is just bits and pieces, and they're trying to make sense of it, and they just think that you're one flew over the cuckoo's nest. But you've really done these things, you've had these thoughts, you've had these experiences, and it's just so fragmented that the whole thing, just to your point, seems like an out of body experience. It's weird.
Yeah, yeah. And there's so much of it, right? There are so
Hmm.
many days and so many nights and so many things and so many different types of mud.
Yeah. And you're like, did this happen then or here? And that's why at Tahoe I started, well, I did it for some other things, but I started doing all of these voice memos because I was like, I'm never going to remember this. So I should just open up my phone and do a quick voice memo and tell the bullet points, so that when I listen back to it, that I can have some semblance of a timeline to be able to put things in order. And even having done that, there are still sections of that race and parts of Moab where I'm like, I don't remember, like, when did that, you know what I mean? Like, it just,
Right.
again, just the information processing. It's so hard sometimes.
Yeah, yeah. I think I had listened to your podcast about those voice memos, which gave me the idea of taking a video every so often at Moab just so I could like see what I looked like. There's those like that TikTok trend or whatever where kids will be like, this is me at the start of my race and then this is me at the end of my race. So I kind of wanted to see how I progressed and what stories I had to tell at those times. So that was really useful and also pretty scary. It was a pretty scary look back because some of those videos are nuts. But yeah, I'm super grateful for just the runners and the volunteers that were all around us to support us through
Hmm.
that, and being out there with people that have done it before, that I was like, well, they're nice and calm, so like I can be calm because they, if I didn't have that experience around me, I would have been like questioning everything, like, am I doing this right? Am I eating enough? Are we sleeping enough? And it was just kind of nice to kind of tag along with that group and just know like, okay, like if they think it's okay, then it's okay because like they've done this before. They're experienced, they're experts. If you finish one of these things, you're suddenly an expert because I don't know, just the amount of unknowns like going into it just overwhelmed me. But yeah, the support out there was just pretty incredible.
Well, now you're an expert.
Yeah, I don't know that I feel like one. But all of the things that uh, that I thought about beforehand and that I worried about and ruminated beforehand, I now have answers to some of those things, right? Like what am I actually going to feel like? I think that was my biggest unknown, was like, what am I actually going to feel like? I've had a little bit of issue with my lower back. I've got a tiny bit of scoliosis, like at the base of my spine. Some discs that get pinched, and every once in a while, like I get really crooked. And
Mm.
this summer, I was really torqued, and I didn't even know if I was going to make it to Moab because my back was just so so I went to my spine specialist and he did like some x-ray guided epidural shots. And it was like, this is going to be your only 200-mile race, right? Like, sure, doc. That plus, um, it was so bad. I would wake up so crooked that I would sleep. Like I folded up a dish towel like 4 or 5 times. So I had like 8 to 16 layers of dish towel and would shove that under my left hip just so that I
Mm.
would wake up like a little more even. Um, Not good. But with the combination of, those epidural shots and working with a really awesome physical therapist, I got myself pain free before the race. But I was really concerned about like, how is my body going to hold up over these days in this heavy pack? I'd
Hmm.
trained all summer with that heavy pack, but your back gets tired, and
Yeah.
it's never even an issue, like
Well,
not
that's
even
good.
an issue. So yeah,
That's
just
great.
like the things that I worried about going into it ended up not being an issue. And then some of the things that I didn't even think about ended up being a pretty big thing. Like I had a
Yeah.
foot care plan. I was thinking it was going to be dry. Our tootsies were going to be all dusty and I was going to do foot baths. Didn't need that because they, So I'd never experienced like foot problems like that before. Just so many crazy things. So,
Yep. Yep.
yeah, yeah, it was a wild ride. And I thought I was one and done, but there's just been this little itch, that like, I loved the experience that we had. I wouldn't change a thing about it. And I think I want another experience, like a volume two. So, I haven't signed up for the lottery yet, but I think I might.
For
I
this
think I
year,
might.
for
Yeah.
2026?
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah. I'm mulling it over. It's probably not the smartest thing that I've ever done, but I'm just so curious to know. I don't know how you feel about drop bags, but packing those drop bags was so stressful because I didn't
Hmm.
know, what am I going to need? When am I going to get there? I had no idea. So now I have a little bit more knowledge to work with. But it's also, you got to expect the absolute unexpected and just be ready for that,
Yep.
which is,
Well, if I do that race again, I'm adopting Jess's drop bag strategy, which is pack everything but the kitchen sink in every single drop bag.
yeah, I know. Yeah. It gets expensive though, you know? It's
Yeah,
one thing to
it
put a
does.
pair of socks in each one, but like, I don't have, I've got some good pieces of gear, but I don't have lots of gear. Like when it comes down to like the clothing pieces and stuff. And the weather there can be so variable. I was thinking that it could be, 90 degrees during the daytime and sunny, and then, 20 some odd degrees at night. But I didn't know what night it was going to be cold or where I was going to need those things. So I ended up just carrying everything, pretty much almost everything. Um, so, but I'm glad to know now that like my body did hold up. My back did hold up. Of course, there was a lot of training that went into that and a lot of preparation. But yeah, yeah, uh, you learn a lot by taking that loop,
Yeah,
taking any loop of
absolutely.
that size and that amount of time is just unhinged for sure.
Well, and you're going to take everything that you learned this time around and apply it the next time. And who knows, next year might be what 2024 was, which was like very hot, and very dry and in the 80s. I mean, we volunteered that year and it was crazy hot. And I just kept thinking, oh my God, if this is the conditions that we have my year next year, I'm screwed. And of course it
Yeah,
wasn't. It was the complete opposite, but you just are rolling the dice every single time. And so I think
right.
some people won't do it because of that, because they can't count reliably on the conditions or how things will pan out past a certain distance, right? Like you could reasonably make your way through a half, a full, a 50K, maybe even a 50 miler if conditions were really unhinged. But 200 and 240 miles, that's a whole other situation. And I think you have to be physically tough, you have to be mentally tough, you have to have a good plan, you have to be able to adapt on the fly, all the things. I mean, you just really have to have some element of all of those things to be able to keep putting one foot in front of the other.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. That's for sure. Yeah.
Well, I will be super excited to. I will be stalking Destination Trails when they pick the lottery to see if your if your name is on there.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I know when I signed up this past year, I had thought long and hard about signing up for that lottery, knowing that if I sign up for this lottery, I'm not, I'm going to be 100% like in my mind like I'm in. And I'm taking this on because it's a huge financial burden too. And then on the day of the lottery, I didn't really know how this lottery was going to go down, and I think they released maybe, I don't know, around 20 names at a time, and I was just sitting there and waiting and waiting, and I was in the very last batch of names that were drawn, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I was so ready to be in it, and then I thought I might not get drawn. I didn't know how hard it was to get in or not. Like I don't know that there's a lot of statistics on what their lottery situation is. I'm trying to get into Western states as well, and there's a lot of data on the Western states
Yeah.
and what your chances are, which are like 1.7%.
Yep.
So
Pretty low.
yeah, But so if I sign up for this lottery for 26, I'm gonna really hope that I get in. Seems a little crazy, but I need a Misogi for 2026, a yearly goal. It seems like it would be a good one. But yeah, it's tough. Like I love the journey, like the training journey and the process to get there. I with my back kind of acting up closer to the race. I mean, I was fully invested like in the training and whatnot, but when my back really took a turn for the worse, and I wasn't sure if I was even going to make the start line, I kind of took the idea of Moab out of my head. I continued with the training, but was like, I was so distraught that I might not make it that
Hmm.
I couldn't like research the race or study it. I couldn't
Yeah.
even I couldn't make eye contact with the runner's manual because I would have been devastated if I couldn't make it. But by the time, it was almost race time, I felt so fulfilled, like just with
Hmm.
the journey of the training. And I felt so satisfied and just proud of myself that I had the courage to tackle the training and the idea of it. And so, I mean, anybody that even is brave enough to like, or crazy enough to sign up for this and tackle the idea of it and the training and the preparation, like, is just like huge props to anybody that goes after a goal of that size. And I really felt content, even if I hadn't been able to toe the start line, just having the courage
Hmm.
to even try.
Hmm.
Um,
I
so
think that's super important because a lot of people will maybe have the idea that they want to do something big and they have their sights set on something like Moab or another long distance race relative to them, and they won't do it because they just can't get over the hurdle of, well, what if I don't make it? Like what if I DNF or whatever. And I think that it's so important for you to have said what you just said, which was like the process is as valuable, if not even more valuable, than having actually done the thing, because that's where you're going to learn a ton. I mean, you learned a lot going through the actual experience of Moab, but the lead up, the build up, the process, the training, that's going to teach you a lot too.
yeah, and it doesn't have to be a 200-mile race. It could be like training for your first 5K, training, whatever it is. It doesn't even need to be like a running goal or a running thing, but just having the courage to set a goal and go after it is so important. Like, yeah, that's been a really that's been a really great thing for me, just to keep structure in my life and show my kids that, like, to set big goals and dream big and dream as if I mean, we're not limitless, but to put yourself out there, whatever that may be. um, I don't expect them to be ultra runners, but I do want them to like chase after big goals and not be afraid, like not be afraid of what their limits are, and maybe to even try to find what that limit is, and it doesn't matter where it is. It matters that you try to, that you
Yep.
explore.
Yep.
That's the fun part. I think that sometimes ultra running it can be like a very like isolating sport or experience for me. I think part of it is because I spend so much time in the woods, but it's also, I think sometimes I feel like unrelatable,
Hmm.
but which is hard, because we choose to do a thing that not many people do. But like, I want to say that, like, I cheer anybody on that takes on, like, doesn't matter what the distance is, like, somebody's 1 mile, somebody's first mile is somebody else's 50K, is somebody else's 100 mile or whatever. Like, I'm just happy for people that take on a challenge, and
Yes.
whatever it may be. It doesn't need to be a 240-mile race. That's kind of cuckoo. And you really have to have your why kind of locked in, and which is also a hard question to answer. What's your why? I don't know. The buckle's pretty sweet.
For some
I
people,
can't.
that is the reason, right? A collection of tokens that give them all the feels, right, when they go back and look at them. And that's just as good as any reason or any why, whatever is going to pull you through and help you through some of those dark moments, that's and it can shift. It doesn't necessarily have to be the same thing that you hold so tight to. It can rotate. And I think that's where people can really benefit from having multiple reasons why rather than one, because you might exhaust the one and then be like, well, I don't
Yeah.
really know why I'm doing this.
Yeah. Yeah. I hope that, I know people have just been like the people, that have asked me about it in my circle, like, they definitely think I'm a little crazy, but are also just, I'm not, like some like crazy fast athlete or whatever. I'm just a regular person. And so I hope that, just by going on this journey and, having the courage to try it, that people, will see like, hey, I can do things that are really, really hard. And again, it doesn't have to be a running goal, but just spending time on a hobby or something, or whether that be anything. It could be anything, but just having a passion and following it. And
Yeah, you're an example
yeah,
of what's possible.
yeah, yeah. My puppy dog is over here stretching and
Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to come and share your side of the story, your version of everything after where your path and my path diverged. And I think um, it's just really good for people to hear multiple
Abs-
points of view, multiple stories, multiple takes on the situation. Because even though we all do the same race, we all have very different experiences. We share in the weather and in the rain and all that stuff, but everybody processes it differently. Everyone, has different hallucinations or different sleep experiences. So it's good for people to be able to hear that and know that, like, not everybody's going to have the same experiences as Jess or, as Andy Glaze or as, some of these other maybe more popular social media influencers that they hear about. Like, there's a wide
yeah,
range of stuff that happens. And so you don't have to
absolutely.
be, yeah, you don't have to be a pro in order to do these races.
Yeah, yeah. And I said that ultra running feels isolating, but then also like when you're at these events and you just meet so many people from all over the world, and you work together like through these really difficult times and stuff. And that that community piece of it is just, one of the reasons that gets me out
Yes.
there. It's just so awesome to be out there and share with others, and
Yeah.
and grind. Sometimes it's
Yep.
grinding in silence, sometimes it's grinding in joy and
Yep.
rain and mud, but yeah, it's
All the things.
all the
Well, if
things.
you get
Yeah.
in this year, then you're definitely going to have to come back. And when you finish it again, you're going to have to come back and relay round two, version two, and we'll compare and contrast.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah. And I think gosh, one of your podcast recently talked about doing like the other things that we
Hmm.
might consider, what are the other things? But boy, I know just for ultra running, like those other things need to become, regular things, part of the routine, in order to stay healthy and be able to move on to that next thing. Big time. I'm still recovering over here. My knees are still, a little bit off. My autonomic nervous system, I guess, HRV and resting heart rate is all a little bit wonky. Um,
Yeah,
so
it takes a while for that stuff to course correct and come
it
back
sure
to
does.
normal.
Yeah, yeah. My massage therapist was telling me that she's like, well, that's your body, you know, that your body is scared that you're gonna go do something like that again.
Yep.
And I'm like, well, shh.
Don't tell it.
Yeah, it doesn't know about the lottery yet.
Yeah.
Well, I haven't signed up for it yet, but like it's just like, like what am I gonna do? What am I gonna do next? So yeah, I don't know.
Well, I'm excited to see if your name gets on that list, and even if it doesn't, I'm excited to hear what it is that you choose as your big scary goal, as we say around here, your big scary goal for 2026.
Yeah, I know. If it's not that, it'll be something else, but it won't be as big and maybe as scary, but that's totally fine. That yeah, it'll be something. And I would love to get out and volunteer at some more of these races, just like with the help and assistance that I got for my trail angel. Like I, uh, I want to be able to get out there and give back a little bit
Yep.
too,
Yep.
because
And I
that
think
brings me
once
a lot
you've
of
been
joy.
in one of these situations, one of these races, and again, it doesn't have to be necessarily a 200, but if you've ever received outside, not outside assistance, but outside of your social circle, your crew, your family, your friends or whatever, if you've received help from a volunteer, some sort of a trail angel, it makes you want to give that back so much more because you know how much you appreciated it in the moment and
Right.
you want to make sure that you get to like pass that magic on to somebody else.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I work in the running industry. I work for Atlanta Track Club, and we're the second largest member running organization in the US. It's pretty awesome. And so I know that the volunteers are
Hmm.
so important. I mean, they make things happen, and they're so important to race organizers. And so
Yes.
it would be fun. I would need to travel to some of those destination trail races, but yeah, they're so good, and they're so kind and caring. I
Mm.
would love to. So maybe if I don't get into Moab, I'll hop into a volunteer situation and then be able to skirt the lottery the year after. A lot of people I met on the trail were volunteers that got placement through their volunteer service
Yep. That's how I
from
got in.
all over the world. Oh yeah, cool. Yeah, yeah. So I know they've got like the Arizona Monster 300 coming up. I'm like, maybe a trip to Arizona
There you
this
go.
spring. Yeah,
There you
yeah.
go.
Which race did you volunteer at?
I volunteered at Moab in
Oh, that's
2024.
right. Right. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
Yep.
Got
And
it.
then got in for 2025. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah.
It's worth it too because then, if you volunteer at the race that you're thinking about doing, then you can get a little behind the scenes, especially if it's in a place where you don't have access to readily. You can
Right.
kind of scope it out ahead of time and see the inner workings and think about what to prepare for and stuff like that. So,
Exactly. Yeah. I am dying to get back to if I could go back and just do one section, I really want to go back and do the Porcupine Rim
mm,
to like to the river, and see what it was like when I thought I was dreaming, and
huh?
see Castle Valley during the day, and see that section during the day. Um, Crazy. Yeah.
Well,
Do you,
2026.
do you have any desires to go back to Moab or?
Waffle back and forth. Part of me, I talked about just how sick I was going into it. I underestimated how sick I was, and by the time I got to Indian Creek, I was just like, um, just totally. So I think I have a little like PTSD about being so sick
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
worried that I won't be able to do it because I think that I went into that pretty fit. I definitely wasn't as fit as I could have been. There were some circumstances leading up to that where it just kind of like derailed my training a little bit. But I felt confident in my ability. I had done a 200-mile race before, so that was sort of my thing. I was always like, it's a blessing and a curse because I know what I'm in for, but I also know what I'm in for, so it's a double-edged sword.
Right.
And I go back and forth, like, is this something that I want to try again? Or am I okay just having done Tahoe and, doing 200 miles? What, do I need to, what am I going to prove doing 240 miles? I don't feel a huge sense of um, sadness or regret. I mean, I regret not having the full experience, but I don't regret being out there, in those
Yeah.
conditions, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's sort of if you to your point, if you're in, you have to be all in. And I just don't know. I'm not going to do the lottery for 2026. Maybe for 2027.
Hmm.
I think there's a maybe a possibility, but I would really need to like revisit my training and some other things and do some real mindset work around like, hey, this was an anomaly, right? Like we went into it sick. You did your best. You're that sort of
Yeah.
thing. And I think knowing what I know now about, I don't know if you heard. what Jess said about it, but knowing her take on it, and that literally the first 70 miles, what we endured in the first 24 hours, in her mind is the hardest part because of the setup of the aid stations and just the placement of all the things. Like, had I known that ahead of time, I may have made some different decisions. And I think that's the thing about these longer distance races is you can do them multiple times and have a completely, Jess is a perfect example of that. You can have a completely different experience every single time, and you're never really gonna get it to a place where it's just copy paste. You just do the exact same thing and have the exact same outcome. It's always to her point, it's always a roll of the dice, like whether or not, you're going to make the full loop. And so I don't know, all that to say, I think like, I don't feel like I need to get my revenge on that race. Like I don't really feel like I have unfinished business there, but I reserve the right to change my mind.
Yeah,
Maybe.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know that my phone died going from like Oasis to Indian Creek. And
Mm.
in my mind, that was the spot that I was actually looking forward to most on paper, or, like the most picturesque part for me was going to be that part. And I was miserable. I wanted to quit. And I just, and my phone was dead, so I couldn't take any pictures. And so like, yeah, I'm like, well, I think I want to kind of rewrite that little section a little bit,
Hmm.
but and I could go back for a rewrite, and it could be, just as hard, if not harder, or, who knows, you never know what you're going to get. Yeah. It's just the great unknown, but isn't that, I guess, maybe why we do some of these crazy things, is just to
Yes.
expect the unexpected, and work through those things that pop up that, um, you've got to get through as an ultra runner, the stomach issues and knee pains, and whatever else you experience out there. But yeah, I don't know how much time I have left to do 200 milers, with
Hmm.
my spine doc is saying, this is it. One only, please. And I I'll be running for a long time, but I
Yes.
don't think that training and racing like 200-mile races is going to be in my future for that much longer, just
Yeah.
because, it's,
Yeah. It's a
yeah,
lot.
yeah, it's a lot. And I want to be able to run for a long time. And so, I need to make good choices.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's scary. You just don't know. I don't have a crystal ball to tell, to, I had some knee x-rays after the race, like when we were kind of taking a look at my knee issues, and everything looks good. I had a Baker's cyst behind one of
Mm.
my knees that I think probably popped up from that first night from the pain. Um, but everything else looks good. But who knows? I just and there are some people that are out there in their late 50s, 60s. Gosh, there was some there are tons of people out there that are still doing it, but it gets harder. The recovery gets harder. I
Yeah.
think
And you
the
have
older
to
I
your
get.
point, yeah, you got to be smart about the training, you have to be smart about the recovery, about doing all the other stuff like we talked about. And I think,
Yes.
to that end, some people are a one and done. Some people just can't get enough. They go back time and time again. And I don't think that my personal opinion on it is that you can do one, you can do 1,000 of them. It doesn't make you any better or any worse of an ultra runner if you choose to do
Exactly.
one distance and then stop. And I think you've brought up a couple points, right? You want to be able to run for a long time. You have some physical issues. So, maybe the smart decision is one or
Yeah.
two, and
Yeah.
then move on to a different challenge. So,
Right. It's like, yeah, exactly. It's like playing
yeah.
with fire.
Yeah.
Maybe just a little bit.
Oh, such a good analogy. It is. It is
Yeah.
very much like playing with fire, and how close to the fire can you get before you get burned? And we all
Right.
get singed a little bit. We don't come out the other side of a 200 unscathed, but it's
Right.
managing the fire, managing the temperatures.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate. I think people are really going to enjoy hearing your perspective on this. And I'm serious. If you get in, you got to come back and tell the story.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah.
I love your podcast and um, your coaching presence, and that you work with women and get them to their finish lines and help people achieve like some really awesome goals. I think that's
Thank you.
just so amazing for the community. And it's just been really nice to meet you and
Yeah.
to talk to you about
Same.
all this fun stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. I really enjoyed our time together hanging out at night, just chit chatting and working through. And I know, like I said, people are really going to enjoy hearing your perspective and hearing your story and understanding that it is totally possible, even if you've got back issues and knee issues and, all this just different life circumstances. So it's
Yeah.
great. That's why I love having other people on the podcast to be able to tell their stories. So it's super fun.
Yay. Yeah.
Yay.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so